Welcome to another podcast. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Zleya Keskin. I'm a lecturer in Islamic spirituality. I work at Isra Academy and Charles Sturt University. And I have Dr. Omer Atilla Ergi with me, who lectures in theology, Islamic theology, and he's also a physicist. Welcome, Dr. Omer.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation again.
Well, we've got a very interesting topic today, and we want to look at can we prove the existence of God scientifically? So that's, often bringing science, especially in the Western world, bringing science and religion together seems to be like trying to bring water and oil together. It doesn't mix kind of thing.
Yes.
Do you find that approach makes it more challenging to talk about these topics?
Not really. There are a lot of people, in particular, disbelievers as well, or skeptics, we can say agnostics, we can say, who argue that, God's existence cannot be proven scientifically. There are some believers who argue for that too. And I think the key word there is proven and scientific. They are the two key words there.
Yeah.
Because people often confuse proof with evidence. They are two different concepts. The proof is something, you made a claim and you have actually, physical proof to support that claim. But evidence is a different thing. Evidence is the information that you gather, to move towards a proof. And evidence includes, for example, documentation. It includes testimonies. The human testimonies, it could be. And evidence also includes objects, the physical objects. If we think about a crime scene, that you would understand what I'm saying there. So evidence, as it increases, it sort of strengthens the claim, and it moves towards proof.
So
That's
evidence
what
can lead to proof?
Yes, evidence, if it increases.
Yeah.
If you have more evidence, then you're closer to proving the thing. But the argument, you cannot prove God scientifically if we are referring to actually testing God, in a lab or something, or through scientific methodologies, It's not possible because you cannot test the supernatural. But usually when people make that statement, they make it halfway. They are not making the full statement. They're saying you cannot prove the existence of God scientifically. No, but you cannot disprove either. You got to give the full sentence there, full argument there. And I think the second part is more impossibility. You cannot disprove God scientifically, because how are you going to test the supernatural? The universe is so big, can you go beyond the universe? No. So disproving God is a bigger impossibility than proving God scientifically, you know what I mean?
But a lot of non-believers in God would not see that it's on them. That's interesting. There's almost like a psychology to what you're saying. They don't feel like the onus is on them to prove that God doesn't exist. They would say you have to prove that God exists.
That's a common claim.
Yeah.
That's a common claim. Look, I believe the burden of proof is upon the denier.
Right.
But they say the burden of proof is on the person who makes the claim that God exists. But the reality is, there are billions of people on earth, and for many thousands of years, people have believed in some sort of a deity, gods or whatever. If you look at history, they always believed in something. So this claim with atheism is quite new.
Right.
See, 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, perhaps you didn't really have atheists, maybe very small numbers. Instead, they looked for alternatives, but not actually atheists. Everyone thought that there's a creator, there's an originator.
Even if they're worshipping an idol,
they are still
replacing.
They still believe in this power. And this is quite new when you look at it from that perspective, which means you came later. Then the burden is upon you, because everyone already believed. Then you denying that, then you should have evidence, you should have proof to your claim. They can say, look, we don't need proof because we are just denying. We're just rejecting.
Yeah, and also they'll say, well, science it wasn't so advanced 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Now that science is advanced, therefore They could take the
Yes, you know
that way.
Yes, you know what that argument is really in reality. They call it the God of gaps.
Oh.
That is the argument, God of gaps, which means that whenever science cannot figure out something, or science has not discovered something, that gap is filled with God. That's what they're saying.
Oh, I see.
And they're saying, since science doesn't know, you put God there. God must have done it. There's nothing could be further than the truth, reality.
Okay.
Because we don't believe in a God that fills up gaps. The reality is the things that we discover through science indicates to God. It is the opposite. Because if you look at, for example, Isaac Newton, one of the most famous physicists, in contemporary time, not contemporary, but in recent times, I should say. When Isaac Newton, I'm just giving an analogy, when Isaac Newton discovered the equation for, the gravity, F equals gravitational constant m1 times m2 divided by r squared. All right, that's the formula there between two masses. He did not say, I solved the puzzle, that means there's no God. He did the opposite. He said, look, if there is a perfect system there, if the universe is working with certain laws and constants, then there is a designer. There's a great engineer, who is implementing this. It is the opposite. So
it strengthens the argument.
It strengthens the argument. It's not the God of gift. It's the opposite. The science actually strengthens the argument of God. That's what people don't realize. So it works the other way around in regards to that. Science does indicate to God, and I can use many, many examples in regards to this because I've argued with disbelievers a number of times, debated on this, and they said there's no evidence there, so there's no proof. And as I said, there may be no scientific proof, but there are many evidences.
Scientific evidences
too, philosophical evidences too, scientific evidences in regards to causality. It's there, we know, it's the law of physics. But there is very powerful philosophical evidences as well, and I gave this person an example once. I said, we live in Australia, and we have indigenous people here. They've been around for a very, very long time, 40, 50,000 years of history here. People have discovered cave paintings dating back 17,000 years. That's a long time, cave paintings. And I said to this person, if you walked into that cave and saw those paintings on the wall of the cave, kangaroos, snakes, different painting, colorful designs, I said, the evidence is very clear evidence that somebody painted those. There's no doubt about it.
It didn't just happen.
There is evidence,
There's evidence.
And another evidence is...
Even if you did not see it happening.
That's
right?
what I mean,
okay.
Yes. And the other evidence is whoever did that is an intelligent being. Because there's symmetry there, there's designs there, you can tell it's an artistic work. So intelligent agent. I said, you may not be able to prove who did it. Proof is different because you can't go back 17,000 years and actually see the person, but you can be certain that somebody did that. So some people come, argue against this, like famous, atheists. One of the most famous atheists at the moment is Richard Dawkins. He's very famous, and he comes with arguments like, if we were a product of design, intelligent design, he says we should not have certain faults as human beings in our bodies. Like one common thing that they use, there's a blind spot in human eye.
Right.
Because of the retina, the optic nerve, and there's a point there that it's called the blind spot. And they say, well, if God created human beings, that it would be perfection, not mistakes like that. From their point of view, that's a mistake, But the reality is it doesn't change the argument, because if you purchase a Ferrari, let us say, Testarossa, very famous Ferraris, $2 million. I'm just giving an example. And you purchase Ferrari, you jump into it, you set your windows, and there's a blind spot on the window. Do you say, nobody engineered this, nobody made this, because there's a problem there? No, that doesn't change the argument, because you can see the design, you can see the complexity, the perfection,
And even with the human body, we imply or we think there's a problem. Like I've heard this with the appendix as well, saying, oh, it doesn't have a purpose. I thought everything was created with a purpose.
It does.
Yeah, and the evidence shows that there is a purpose behind the appendix, but also what we see as a flaw isn't really a flaw. Because we, as a human being, are looking at something, a human body, from our limited perspective and making a judgment. Like a Ferrari, I could say, like I know very little about a car. I can look at it and I can say, oh, look, the design of this is, it's hopeless, it's not good enough. But someone who understands design, engineer of a car will look at me and think she has no idea what she's talking about, because they understand the intricacies and the dynamics of engineering and structure and so forth.
Yeah. So, but whoever looks at it, whether they like it or not, they will agree that it was engineered.
Yeah,
it was
right.
engineered. Yeah, there's an engineer there,
and there's a intelligence behind.
Intelligent agent behind it. And if you look at the universe. Yeah. What is, a Ferrari compared to, for example, dragonfly? I'm just giving an example. What is a Ferrari? What is a Mona Lisa painting compared to a real butterfly? You cannot even match them. Look at the beauty in the real nature. Everything has a symmetry. According to ancient Greek philosophers, when they defined beauty, one of them was symmetry. And we see this in nature. Everything has this perfect symmetry. There is a designer behind them. If people are not seeing this, then the Quran, that famous verse in the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, which says, they look, they don't see. They listen, they don't hear. Their hearts are sealed. You're just seeing it, but not accepting it. This is something that we cannot deny, all the way from, the way that all atoms, molecules are configured, the proteins in the human body, the way they work, everything, our DNA coding, These are all amazing signs of design in front of us, and trying to explain that with coincidences and chances, it does not work. But stubbornness, that's the real problem there.
So they're all scientific evidences. That stuck in my mind that you mentioned. So these are all scientific evidences, because when we look at creation through the eye of science, we see the intricacies, we see the intelligent design. So I guess that means that it's really important for us to look at really the universe from that perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a perspective, like you said. But as I said before, people like, for example, Richard Dawkins and many atheists repeat that. We talked about this once with you, I think. I find that very childish, these sort of claims. They say, look, I don't believe in fairies either. I don't believe in unicorns either, I don't know, how can you compare God to fairies and unicorns? Is there any evidence to existence of unicorns? Is there any evidence to the existence of fairies? How do you, bridge the two together? But there are billions of evidences to the existence of God. We can say everything indicates to God. What indicates to fairies? How can you make a comparison like that? And intelligent people making claims like that, it sounds funny to me, comical. So that is not an argument.
Flawed argument, isn't it?
Yeah, flawed, very flawed. And these people do not have an argument at all for the non-existence of God. That is why they always try to attack religion. They always try to look for flaws in religion, because they don't have an argument of their own.
It's attacking and ridiculing as well, isn't it?
If you have an argument for God, bring it up. We'll discuss it. Say, this is the argument for God. I have never heard a valid argument to disprove God. I have never heard of one. Neither scientific nor philosophical. There is only one common argument they keep on using. It is the theodicy argument, Why does God allow evil, If evil exists, then there's no God. It does, it's contradiction, they say. But there is not an argument to disprove God.
No.
Evil can exist, God can still exist. That's a different thing. It is not disproving God.
No,
you know what I mean?
it just that's why your analogy of the cave was very powerful, because it's, again, you can't, when you see that, there has to be with everything that, you say there's something behind, a cause behind, a causality.
Yes.
And when you see that picture, even if you did not see someone actually carve it out on the cave,
Yes.
you know that it didn't happen from nowhere. But then we're saying this universe, perfect universe, happened from nowhere.
It happened to me with one person. We were going back and forth. He's saying that, you claim God exists, you prove it. And I'm saying to him, you're denying God, you prove it. At the end, I said to this person, how about this, You give me only one proof, one evidence that God doesn't exist. In return, I will give you 10 proofs. And the person couldn't give one proof, not even one. And at the end, I listed some of the proofs that, the evidences that we have, and I said that the causality argument, temporal regress argument, contingency argument, design argument, teleological argument, the lawgiver argument, there's so many of them that we can produce. They're all evidences, as I said. And when evidences gather, become a huge pile, it's a proof. It becomes a proof, but they cannot provide a proof.
Can I ask another question? It's related to this, and it's based on the comments that we get sometimes from our viewers, in that we're going into a lot of effort to scientifically prove that there is evidence that God exists. And some people, I see comments saying, well, if Allah says in the Quran that he exists, it's kind of saying, why are you going to all this effort? What's your thoughts on those kind of comments? And we had this comment, especially with
yes.
Mira, if Allah says something happened, it happened. Kind of like, why nitpicking? They see it that way. I think these conversations are so important.
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
I saw one comment that we did for Isra. I laughed when I saw that. I wouldn't listen to a man without beard. So you get this type of mentalities too. It's really comical. I don't know which age they're living in. Okay, it's sunnah to live, be it. We have no doubt about that. But knowledge is not in the air. It's a very comical. So people do that a lot. You may believe, but what about all the rest of the world? Don't you care about other human beings?
Especially the youth who are struggling.
Don't you care about them? Don't you want them to attain salvation? So we are, in a way, doing a prophetic mission. We're following what the prophet did. So our aim is to, save people's eternity. That's what this is all about. So we will explain with every means, whether it's philosophical, scientific, theological, we will use all means.
Whatever it takes.
Spiritual, like you said, it's important, yes. At the end of the day, of course, faith is in the heart, in the mind, It is not something you can actually test. So there's belief there, but there are a lot of evidence to it as well. So this is what our intention is. That's why we are explaining. Another important thing is they're saying, why do you use science? The reality is, I always repeat this, but God Almighty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has sent us 2 books. People fail to understand this. One is Book of Revelation. The other one is Book of Creation. Can you say, Book of the Universe?
That's right.
Can you say the Quran is authored by Allah, like Kalamullah, but the universe was done by someone else? Ridiculous.
And Allah refers to both as ayah, signs in the Quran.
Yes.
So they are both signs of the existence of Allah. Just on that point you mentioned about science, I remember I did my undergrad degree in pharmacy, and I still till today, I was 18 then, which was many years ago, there was a lecture on genetics, and I think my faith quadrupled when I listened to that lecture. It was just incredible how things function. Just the genetics aspect of us. And I couldn't help saying, SubhanAllah. And so to me, if anything, science has helped strengthen my faith in Allah.
It does, doesn't it? The other day I was reading an article about fruit flies. The size of the fruit fly's brain, it's millimetric, very small, and it has 40,000 neurons in it. it has the ability to memorize things. It's unbelievable. That little tiny thing, after seeing that design, how could you deny the designer?
Yeah.
And it's in very simple things, and art requires an artist, a mechanical design, for example,
Like the
requires an
Ferrari.
engineer. Yeah.
A book needs an author.
The
It's
book
so
needs an
many
author,
examples.
and the universe is, as I said, it's a huge book. It's a huge library, made up of laws, systems, constants. All of these things indicates to this grand designer. Whether people accept that is God or not, that's a different thing. That's their choice. But something is there. There is this great intelligence there. There's this agent there. You have to accept that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
Thank you for that. That's probably a great way to end the discussion. Talking about the scientific evidence for the existence of God. If there's any topic that you would like us to cover, please put it in the comments what that topic might be. We'd be happy to explore that. But once again, thank you for joining us,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Omer.
Thank you.
And until next time, Assalamu alaikum.